Thank you for joining me. I am the Fuzz, and I'm here to entertain. So I want to talk about my top 11, yes, 11 favorite cards that don't see constructed play, for mostly because they just either aren't good enough or because they just don't fit. And the reason I'm talking about that because these cards tend to be really good in trials and they're really fun to play with, but you just never see them, and it's such a shame. So I wanted to give these guys a little bit of love, to showcase them a little bit, and maybe if you're feeling particularly creative, you can try to make a deck with some of these guys. Maybe. Anyways, number 11, we have the Dread Knight, the big bad corruption creature. So I've always liked this guy. He's just a big ass beatstick, you know, a 6/6. He's also deadly. So there is no good trade with this guy. If he's in a fight, everything dies, that's for sure. So he's been changed a little bit here and there, and this incarnation is not at all bad. I mean, putting two things in the back row is really nice because it means your opponent's offense is limited, but corruption decks tend to like to run Succubus instead, because Succubus has an immediate effect, you know, an immediate tangible effect of stealing life, and stealing life via Succubi and Word of Pain can lead to a victory, whereas the Dread Knight doesn't immediately offer any advantage. But I just would like to play this guy a little bit more. In Trials, he's pretty good because it's just a huge creature and you don't always have removal. But a little bit of love for the Knight. Shame we don't see him a little bit more. He feels like the big bad creature of corruption, much more so than Zero, to be honest. But oh well. Maybe in the future. Anyways, moving on to number 10. The Mantle of the Wind. So, the Mantle is one of two cards that has the effect of you attach it, and then when the creature dies, it goes back to hand. I hope that one day we have one of these for every aspect, because I really like this idea. So, this one gives the creature, you know, 1 speed and flying, and then when the creature dies, it goes back to your hand. That's pretty cool. It's not played because it just doesn't do enough. You know, +1 speed and flying, yeah, that's cool if you put it on something like a Treant, something that has a strong board effect, but then it just ends up getting removed anyways, and it's really hard to afford to pay the mana. The reason it's alright in Trials is because you often go to these late turns where you have like 10 mana each, and you have no problem just throwing this on every creature. You know, or like, you know, throwing it on a creature, then it dies, and you throw this on the next creature. The thing is, you never picked more than like one of these, because they end up just being dead. And this one in particular is the weaker of the two, because, why not just run something flying that's fast instead of this? And I mean, outside of Treant, there's not much to use it on. I think the idea is supposed to be to put it on something really slow but powerful, like Dread Knight or Undead Hydra. I mean, let's face it, a flying Hydra with 2 speed is terrifying. But that's a lot of work and setup, and it just gets removed by one card, like 1 Helm, 1 Karthus. Well, maybe not Karthus, but you know what I mean. So, it's cool, but it's just not quite good enough. But I don't know. Maybe one day we'll have like a ridiculously powerful 0-speed creature, and then you put this on it. Hey, maybe there's an idea there. Anyways, moving on to number 9. The Enchanted Spring. This is one of my favorite skill shrines. And it's really simple. You just bounce one of your own creatures back to hand. And it's actually really cool because it's like a tornado outbreak on yourself, and it allows you to reuse certain enter the battlefield effects like Mesmerizing Spirit, like Succubus, Library Guards, you name it. It's just really good. And it doesn't see play because nature, like, this is designed to be in a control deck, right? Obviously, you're not gonna use this in the early game. It's supposed to be in a deck that goes late, tries to go later. But the thing is, nature is not really well designed for that. They just don't have any late game. So, and if you want to use nature as a support color for your late game plans, you're probably better off picking Wisdom for the card draw, or Hell Dominion if you're not already using it. So, it's a shame because I really like this card, but it just doesn't have much of a place. I do actually have a deck that I'm currently testing out that uses this, and essentially the goal is to abuse this card with Mesmerizing Spirit to just keep discarding your opponent's cards, you know, weaken their hand, And it works alright, but it has some other problems. Nature itself just doesn't really have very good battle cry effects, to be honest. Like, if you think about it, what nature creature do you want to enter the battlefield multiple times? Storm Fairy comes to mind because it's essentially then a reusable Tornado Outbreak. And that's kind of good, I guess, but other than that, maybe a Fey of Charm to save it, I guess. That could work, but again, it's just... It's in an aspect that can't really use it, so you have to use this as support for another aspect. Like Corruption, where you can use Spirits and Succubi, and that works reasonably well. But you could also just as well run Wisdom and use card draw. Or run Dominion, and they have card draw and hella removal and all kinds of good stuff. So that's why it's a bit underused. But I do genuinely want to make this card useful in my decks because I just like the idea. I like the idea of having this reusability on your creatures. Used to be really decent with like Unicorn, just reusable spell removal, but nowadays Unicorn is not as good. Anyways, enough about the Enchanted Spring. Really cool art too. Disarm. So this is a really cool spell. Up to 2 enemy creatures have 0 attack. Really cool. And this spell actually does see a very tiny amount of play, specifically in OTH decks. 1 turn heal. Basically, you use this. You know, you might use this just to stop attacks. This alongside Angelic Song and stuff like that, but that's all it ever does. It's never used in any kind of a deck that tries to contest the board. Which is weird, right? Because you'd think that's exactly the kind of deck that would want to use it. I mean, if you use this in a big battle, you could just completely crush the board. It's just that in Constructed, that doesn't happen that much. In Trials, however, this card can be quite good and really neat trick, but Constructed just isn't like a board battle. It's not really a battle for board control, like where there's like each player has like a whole bunch of creatures. That really doesn't happen in Constructed. That's why this card just doesn't work very well. And 2 mana means you won't be playing it anytime soon. You know, early on you need to spend your mana playing stuff, not this card. So poor Disarm. Oh well. Namir's Blessing. So this card is similar to Mantle of the Winds, but it's actually a different kind because it doesn't keep going back. You do, however, draw a card for when it comes in. So I suppose you could technically count it, in which case there'd be 3 of those cards. So this one means the creature can be targeted by anything. Well, you can target it, but your opponent can't target it with like spells and abilities. They can still attack it though. So really cool. You'd think something like this should be abusable somehow, right? One thing that comes to mind is Drayla. You put this on Drayla, and they basically can't do anything. The only way to remove her is with like Cataclysm or something, or like Infernal Tribute. Otherwise, Drayla just sits in the back and can't be touched, and just steals the whole board. Really fun, but again, it's really slow. It's like a turn 3 play. You can't play this on turn 3. There's nothing that you'll play before this that you need to protect in such a way. In Trials, it's sometimes really good, but again, just like Mantle of the Winds, it's a card you might throw one of into your deck, and it's good when it is, but, you know, you don't really suffer too much if you never draw it. It's a cool card, but it's hard to imagine building a deck around this. I don't think we have any real creatures that could really make use of it, and most importantly, Cataclysm is a very popular card because, well, it's Cataclysm, and Cataclysm gets around this, so it's a bit of a risk, and especially given how, you know, widespread Dominion is these days. Namir's Blessing is kind of not looking very attractive right now. Anyways, so Disciple of Zash is the cool shaman. It's a very good shaman, possibly the best shaman. And he's very simple. He sits in the back row, and every turn, for 1 mana, he deals 1 damage. That's actually really good. Basic Zash's hero power used to do exactly that, but for 2 mana with a 3-turn cooldown, and it was changed because it was considered too powerful. I honestly don't think it was too powerful, especially the way rages these days. Anyways, this card is actually really nasty sometimes, because 1 extra damage every turn basically means your opponent's 1 health creatures just suck. They get instantly killed. And not only that, you can use this guy to up the damage range of your spells and creatures anytime you need to. If you have a Fia, you can use this guy to damage something and then finish it off with a Fia, basically giving her 2 attack. if you have a fireball, you can use it and this guy to do 4 damage instead of 3. So it's a pretty good card, actually. The main reason he doesn't see play is because Rage has been in a bad way recently because of Mutant running around everywhere and just, you know, Rage sucking. And if you want to play an aggressive deck, you probably are better off with Elves. And that's really it. Because you are never going to splash Rage. Rage is not something you splash. Rage is something you go with mainly. And this guy he's alright. But again, he's very vulnerable to Mutant. And even though Mutant is easier to handle, paying 2 mana for this and then having Mutant kill it is just really rough. It's basically nothing more than a Mutant casualty. Just like Phoenix is a Helm casualty. So as long as Mutant is the way he is, and he is as common as he is, we're not going to see this guy played much. But he does see a little bit of play because he's a Shaman. So Shamans have to run this, right? Because they don't have any good Shamans. Well, mostly no good Shamans. And this is one of the only ones that is. So they have no choice. Alright, this is the Disciple of Zash. We've talked enough about you. It's actually really funny if you have several of these on the back row and just literally machine gun your opponent's whole board. Anyways, number 5. Deathbound Incarnate. Whoa. So, this guy, this is, I think, maybe my favorite Incarnate because it's really interestingly designed. It has the potential to be an absolutely monstrous creature, but at the same time, it's actually not that dangerous because if he's a 10-10 and he hits you in the face, well, milling 10 cards is not nearly as bad as losing 10 life. So, on one hand, he's really huge. On the other, he's not super duper dangerous. He does get more dangerous because as he mills stuff, you know, creatures get milled, he gets bigger. So it's really cool. But the thing is, Power Lust Incarnate exists, and it's much more powerful than this without any gimmicks. Yeah, sorry Deathbound Incarnate. And if you're playing a Corruption deck, in this mana slot, you're going to run Bloodrich Harpy, basically. Or Bedeviled Fiend, or both, right? Bloodrich Harpy and Bedeviled Fiend over this guy. This guy kind of requires some work. He's obviously designed for a mill deck, and a mill deck of any, like, decent quality hasn't really come out, so that's why Mr. Deathbound Incarnate has been sitting on the sidelines. And it's a shame, because he's really cool. In Trials, he's actually sometimes really good if you play him later on, and he's like a huge body they can't deal with. You know, if he mills for 9, because Trial decks are smaller, that could actually just cause them to lose. If they take 2 hits from this guy, it's over. So it's really cool. Really, really cool card. Gets countered really hard by Vulture, which is really funny, but okay. It is what it is. Moving on to number 3. Unbreakable Spirit. So, I can't even remember the last time I've seen this card played against me. In Constructed, that is. So, you look at this effect, you think, okay, so you could get a lot of cards with this, right? Yeah, you can. And in fact, in Trials, this card can work really well. You play this down, and your opponent doesn't want to beat you down because you'll draw a bunch of cards. It's actually pretty effective. The thing is, in Constructed, this is really slow because you pay 2 mana and you have to save mana to be able to draw cards. And if your opponent is attacking with a 10-10 Power Lust Incarnate, he doesn't care that you drew a card. You're going to lose the game pretty soon. So the problem with this card is simply that it's slow. And you're not going to build a draw engine around this because it's just too slow and not too consistent. If you want a draw engine, you probably just go with Stronghold Metropolis and just consistently sacrifice your militia or something. And this is much more effective and much more reliable than this. So yeah, that's what it is. Really cool card, actually. Just not really in the flavor that Constructed is these days. Anyways, moving on to number 2. Hands from Beyond. This card may win the title for the most deceptively dangerous card in the game. Because it's the kind of card nobody even bothers to think about, right? Okay, lower enemy speed by 1, who cares? That is until you run up against it and realize just how annoying it is. If you've played Trial games and you've run up against this, you've felt the pain. Having all of your 2-speed guys become 1-speed is so annoying. Because they suddenly can't fight for the board anymore. And if your opponent plays something with 3-speed, it might as well be unblockable. And God help you if your opponent has 2 of these, because then all your shit is 1-speed permanently. Yeah. And this makes Restless Tombs really powerful because the zombies basically gain speed, and that's really good for them. it doesn't see play. Like, you might think, okay, why doesn't Corruption play this, right? Making zombies be able to catch up to stuff, it seems like a no-brainer. It suffers the same problem as a lot of the other cards. It's just a little bit slow. You're not really gonna want to play this on turn 3, right? And how many of these are you gonna want to draw? I mean, I could imagine maybe running 3 of these in a deck. It might be okay. It's just, it's something you'll play later. Like, early on, you can't really afford that. That said, it could help against something like elves, because a lot of elves are 3-speed, and reducing that to 2-speed means your ghouls and rotting remains can, like, catch up to them. But against, like, Dominion, they don't really care. They've got Power Lust, they've got Mutants, they've got Karthus and Cataclysm and all this. They don't care what the speed of their creatures is. So that's the only real bummer. In Trials, though, this card is ridiculously annoying to deal with. It can and will cause you to lose games by not being able to block anything. Trust me. And if your opponent follows up with a huge zombie like an undead Hydra that suddenly can attack everything, yeah, you'd be amazed just how much this card can mess you up. That's why it's number 2. Why isn't it number 1? Well, because number 1 is even more deceptively insane. Anyways, the number 1 favorite card, and actually the most powerful of all of these, that doesn't see constructed play, is Murder Instinct. The thing about this card is that I've had a lot of use with it in Trials, and it is absolutely devastating in Trials, because you attach this to any random 2-drop, and it can kill 2 creatures that it can catch up to, because it becomes deadly and can attack one more thing. So something crappy like a 2/2 goblin or something could attack 2 necromantic cults and kill them both, and this goes back to your hand. So it's nuts, honestly. It's almost mind-boggling that this card isn't even played. But I thought about that, and the reason why it isn't played is actually very simple, because it's in Dominion, as in the aspect that has Cataclysm, and Helm, and Karthus, and Drayla, and Devious Plot, and Assassinate, and Mutant. So, they just don't need it. Dominion doesn't need this card, really. I think if this was in any other aspect, it might actually legitimately see play, because making something deadly gives you a good trade. If you have a lot of 3-speed creatures, that's an easy trade. And you can even hit multiple things. This may be like the most efficient way to just board control, because this goes back to your hand when the creature dies. And being able to attack multiple things lets you trade ridiculously well. This card is absolutely overpowering in Trials, and it has won me many games, because if I have a creature on the board, my opponent plays stuff, I just kill all their stuff, I get this back in my hand, I play a creature, and I put it on that creature. And it's just like permanent board lockdown. It's a phenomenal card in Trials. What can I say? Now, because it is one, it can be splashed. I have thought about including this in other kinds of creature-based decks that maybe lack removal otherwise. Think about this. Put this on a ranged creature. Put this on an ambushing sharpshooter. Basically, kill any 2 things you don't like that the sharpshooter can catch up to. Haldiri can kill basically anything he doesn't like. Pretty good stuff. Again, it's a great card in Trials to throw 1 into your deck, because once you draw it, it'll get you tremendous value. But having multiple of these is not too good, because they don't really stack in any way. So if you were to run this card in some capacity, I can't imagine running more than maybe 2, maybe 3 if you have a lot of range stuff. I mean, something like Thea could probably make good use of this, but just being able to kill, basically act as emergency removal against anything you don't like. So I like the card. I think it's tremendous. Some people have even said it's overpowered, and it may be. It may very well be. It's just that it's completely underused, because, again, Dominion doesn't need to use this card. They have so many ways to hard remove stuff. And yet, again, it seems like whenever there's any way to hard remove something, Dominion gets it, and they shouldn't. Because you don't want one faction to have all this removal, because as long as they do, they'll always be the top faction, because they can handle anything you throw at them. Something as simple as Devious Plot. can allow you to handle any threat. And you don't have to worry about something like Drayla screwing you over completely because you have these cards, and Murder Instinct is among those cards. But again, you will never include this in your constructed Dominion deck because you have better, more efficient ways to deal with stuff. But if you consider splashing Dominion, when you maybe are not going to run 2 aspects, you maybe won't run Cataclysm and Helm, and you are already considering Devious Plot, you know, you could consider this card. It could help you. It could help you, like, remove Power Lost Incarnates, for instance, as long as it can keep a board of some kind. Yeah. Works well with Swift creatures again. Fia is the cheapest Swift creature in the game at 2 mana. So for 4 mana, it essentially acts as kill anything. Assuming Fia doesn't get, like, assassinated or something. So yeah, there's that. That is my number 1 card that is not played in Constructed. Try it out. If you see it in Trials, pick one up for sure. It's really, really good. Unless your deck is already loaded with all kinds of other removal. I mean, if you are drafting Dominion, it may very well be. But if it's not, even one Murder Instinct will go a long way. Trust me. I know. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. And I'll see you guys next time.